Hi, my name is Rachel Turner. I'm 34 years old. For as long as I can remember, I believed I was an only child, carrying the entire weight of my parents' hopes and expectations on my shoulders. But what I didn't know was that being the only one wasn't just my role, it was the greatest lie of my life. If you're watching this, please hit the like button, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from, and subscribe to this channel. Your support means more than you know, and sharing your own experiences helps remind people like me that we're not alone. Growing up, I thought being an only child explained everything. The silence in our house, the constant pressure, the way my parents demanded perfection from me but never gave much in return. My father, Samuel, was a man of rules and numbers, strict and efficient, always reminding me that weakness was not allowed. My mother, Helen, softer in tone but equally demanding, constantly said, "Rachel, you are our everything. You must never fail." I grew up absorbing those words like commandments. When I came home with perfect grades, I would receive a short nod, as if success was the bare minimum expected of me. When I won a science fair, my mother patted my shoulder once before turning her attention to dinner. Love, in my house, wasn't expressed in affection. It was measured by how well I lived up to the role they had written for me. But even as a child, little details whispered that something was off. I once found a baby blanket in the attic with the name Anna stitched in fading thread. Our family photo albums had pages torn out, leaving awkward gaps where memories should have been. Sometimes neighbors made strange comments like, "You two must be exhausted with kids," only to be met with my mother's frozen smile and quick reply, "Rachel is all we'll ever need." I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe Anna was a name they had considered for me before I was born, that missing photos weren't important. But deep down, a seed of doubt began to grow. Why did my parents always change the subject so quickly when I asked about family? Why did their eyes shift away from mine when certain topics came up? By the time I was a teenager, I had learned the safest way to survive was to stay silent. Silence about the blanket, silence about the missing photos, silence about the hollowness that clung to our home like an invisible curtain. I filled that silence with books, numbers, and endless hours of study. My parents praised me for being independent, for never asking too much, for being strong enough to carry myself. But strength, when built on secrets, is fragile. I had no idea that one day, in the cold corridors of a hospital, the truth about those silences would finally burst open, and my world would never be the same again. The hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and faint coffee, that blend of life and exhaustion, unique to places where people wait for news that could change everything. I had rushed there after my father collapsed at work, his colleagues calling me with urgency in their voices. My hands shook as I parked my car, hurried through the sliding glass doors, and gave my name at the reception desk. "Rachel Turner, family of Samuel Turner," I said quickly, my voice thinner than I intended. The nurse nodded and gestured toward the waiting area. "Doctor will be with you shortly." I sat down, clutching my bag as if it might anchor me to the ground. My heart hammered with fear, but beneath that fear was something else. An old, unshakable sense that whenever crisis struck, I would be the one expected to hold everything together. Minutes crawled by. When the doctor finally appeared, his expression was calm, but serious. "Your father is stable," he said. Relief rushed through me, almost enough to make me collapse in the chair. But before I could catch my breath, his eyes lingered on me strangely, as if he was hesitating to say more. "There's something you should know," he continued carefully. "Your parents have requested that the other daughter be contacted as well. She's listed as next of kin." The words didn't register at first. "Other daughter?" I blinked at him, my mind scrambling. "There must be some mistake," I replied, my voice sharp. "I'm their only child." The doctor tilted his head sympathetically. "The chart clearly states otherwise. Her name is Anna Turner Anna." That name again. My body went cold, the memory of that attic blanket flashing in my mind. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my throat felt as though it had closed. I forced myself to speak, though my voice cracked. Where is she? She's on her way here, he said simply, before excusing himself to check on my father. I sat frozen, my thoughts a whirlwind. Anna, a sister. My parents had hidden this from me my entire life. Every lonely night, every celebration where I was reminded I was the only one, every time I wondered why love in our house felt incomplete, it had all been built on a lie. The waiting room buzzed with the sound of televisions, beeping machines, and footsteps echoing off linoleum floors. Yet I heard none of it. My mind replayed every suspicious detail I had ignored, every gap in the family albums, every whispered comment from neighbors. The truth had been circling me for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, in this sterile hallway, I realized my entire identity had been shaped not just by what my parents gave me, but by what they kept from me. Soon the doors would open, and with them, so would the secret that had been buried in silence for decades. The sliding doors opened with their usual mechanical sigh, but for me, it felt like the entire air in the hospital shifted. My eyes darted toward the entrance, and that's when I saw her. A young woman walked in quickly, her steps uncertain, her face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. She looked about my age. No, a little younger, maybe late 20s. Her hair was a shade of chestnut that gleamed under the harsh lights, and her eyes, wide and searching, seemed strangely familiar. I had never seen her before in my life, yet something in the tilt of her chin, the curve of her brows, echoed features I had stared at in the mirror for years. She walked to the reception desk and spoke softly, but I caught her words. "I'm here for Samuel Turner. I'm his daughter, Anna daughter." The word hit me like a slap. My stomach churned, and I gripped the edge of my chair as if to steady myself. The nurse pointed toward me. Anna turned, her gaze locking with mine. For a long, unbearable moment, neither of us moved. She hesitated, then walked toward me, each step carrying the weight of years I didn't know existed. "Rachel?" she asked gently, as if unsure of her own voice. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "That's me." "And you're Anna." She nodded, her lips pressing together, as though she too was struggling to breathe. For a few seconds, silence stretched between us, filled only by the distant echo of a monitor beeping down the hall. "I guess we should talk," she finally said. I wanted to shout, to demand answers right there, but the words caught in my chest. Instead, I motioned toward the empty chair beside me. She sat, clasping her hands together nervously. Up close, I could see the tremble in her fingers, the way her eyes glistened as though she'd been carrying a truth too heavy to bear. And yet, I couldn't ignore the resemblance, the same sharp cheekbones as mine, the same hesitant half-smile I used when I didn't know what to say. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice low but firm. She blinked, startled. "About 5 years. Mom and Dad told me, but they made me promise not to reach out. They said it would only complicate things." Complicate things. The phrase stung like vinegar on an open wound. My parents hadn't just hidden Anna. They had intentionally built walls to keep us apart. 5 years, I whispered, shaking my head. And all that time, I thought I was alone. Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I thought about you every day. I wanted to meet you, but I didn't want to betray them." The waiting room seemed to shrink around us, the walls pressing closer with every confession. My chest tightened, torn between fury and grief. A part of me wanted to embrace her, to hold on to the sister I never knew existed. Another part wanted to run, to escape the betrayal that had defined my life. Before either of us could say more, the doctor reappeared, calling, "Family of Samuel Turner?" We both rose instinctively, side by side. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing alone as his daughter. But the truth was clear. Everything I thought I knew about my family was shattered, and Anna was the living proof. The doctor led us down the hallway, his shoes clicking softly against the polished floor. For years, I had walked through hospitals on business visits or for distant relatives, but this time every step felt like a march toward a truth I wasn't prepared to face. Beside me, Anna walked quietly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. When we reached my father's room, the doctor paused, lowering his voice. "Your father is stable for now. He'll need rest and continued monitoring, but he's out of immediate danger. The good news is, he's conscious." Relief should have washed over me, but instead, another storm brewed inside. Conscious, awake, capable of explaining everything he and my mother had kept hidden from me for decades. The doctor continued almost gently, as if sensing the tension between us. "Both of you are listed as next of kin. Medical decisions will require cooperation. Both of you." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Not one daughter. Two. The secret I had carried as suspicion for years was now written plainly in hospital records. I nodded stiffly, but my eyes darted toward Anna. She was staring at the floor, as though the weight of her presence in this moment was almost unbearable. My chest tightened with conflicting emotions: anger, curiosity, and something I didn't want to admit. A fragile thread of connection. The doctor gestured toward the door. "You can go in, but keep your voices low. He needs rest." Anna stepped forward first. I followed, my legs moving automatically though my body felt numb. Inside, my father lay propped against white pillows, his skin pale, his breathing steady but weak. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, a silent orchestra of beeps and soft hisses. For a man who had always seemed so unshakable, so unyielding, he looked suddenly small. His eyes fluttered open, and when they landed on me, recognition flickered. But then his gaze shifted, and when it found Anna, a shadow of something like guilt crossed his face. "Rachel." "Anna," he whispered, his voice rough. Hearing our names together felt like an earthquake. Two simple words had cracked the foundation of everything I believed. My father didn't look shocked to see us side by side. He looked resigned, as if he had always known this day would come. I wanted to demand answers right then, to force him to explain why I had lived 34 years in the dark. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I stood frozen, watching his chest rise and fall, wondering how long he had rehearsed living in a house of silence. Anna moved closer to his bedside, her trembling hand brushing against the railing. I stayed back, unable to take another step. 2 daughters, 1 father, and a truth that could no longer be hidden. The quiet hum of machines filled the hospital room, each beep marking a rhythm that felt far too calm for the storm inside my chest. My father rested against the pillows, his breathing shallow, his eyes darting between me and Anna. The man who had raised me with discipline, with silence, with endless demands for strength, now seemed cornered by his own secret. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of 3 decades pressed down on the room. I could see Anna shifting uncomfortably beside me, her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. My father finally broke the silence with a hoarse whisper. "Rachel, I never wanted you to find out like this." The words sliced through me. My nails dug into the palm of my hand as I took a step closer to his bed. "Never wanted me to find out. You've hidden my own sister from me for 34 years. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I supposed to live and die believing I was alone?" His face tightened, guilt flickering in his eyes, but his voice carried that same low firmness I had known since childhood. "We were trying to protect you." I let out a bitter laugh. "Protect me? From what? Family? From knowing I wasn't the only one? From understanding why I spent my life carrying burdens that could have been shared?" My voice rose, echoing off the sterile walls. A nurse peeked into the room, then quietly withdrew when she realized this wasn't a medical emergency, but a lifetime one. My father closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Your mother and I, we made mistakes. Anna was—" He stopped, his throat tightening as if the truth itself resisted leaving his mouth. She was born when our marriage was already fragile. Your mother feared that dividing our attention would harm you, that you wouldn't have the life you deserved. I shook my head, disbelief burning through me. So instead, you stripped me of the truth, built my life on a lie, and let me grow up thinking love was something I had to earn while you funneled it into silence. Do you even realize what that did to me? Anna's soft sobs filled the air. She pressed her hands against her face, whispering, "I never asked for this. I didn't want to be hidden. I didn't want to live in the shadows of secrets." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see a stranger. I saw someone who had been trapped in her own cage of lies, just on the other side of the wall my parents had built. My father's chest rose and fell with effort. His voice cracked. "Rachel, I believed you were strong enough. I thought, if one of you had to carry the weight, it should be you. Anna was fragile. You were the one who could endure." The words struck like lightning, illuminating every dark corner of my childhood. Strong enough. The same phrase that had haunted me my whole life, the same justification for every moment they denied me softness, comfort, or care. I leaned closer, my eyes locked onto his. "You didn't make me strong. You made me lonely. You made me believe that being loved meant being invisible. And now, you sit here asking me to understand? I will never understand why you thought deception was love." Silence stretched again, heavy and suffocating. My father turned his face away, his hand trembling as it rested against the blanket. He had no defense left, only the collapse of excuses that had carried him this far. Anna's voice broke the stillness, gentle but determined. "We deserve better, Rachel and I. We deserved truth. Maybe now, it's time you give us at least that." Her words settled like a quiet verdict. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about what had been stolen from me. It was also about what had been stolen from her. I straightened, my heartbeat steadying. The confrontation wasn't over. This was only the beginning. And from this day forward, I would no longer allow their lies to define who I was. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed faintly as I stepped outside my father's room. My legs trembled, my chest still heavy with the words I had hurled at him. The truth was out, and yet, instead of feeling lighter, I carried the crushing weight of betrayal. Anna followed me quietly, her steps soft against the linoleum floor. For a while, we walked side by side without speaking. It was strange. This woman was both my sister and a stranger, someone tied to my blood yet absent from my life. Finally, she broke the silence. Her voice was fragile, but steady enough to reach me. "Rachel, I didn't know about you until I was older. I was told you were better off not knowing about me. They always said, you were too important, too focused, and I was the mistake that needed hiding." I froze. Her words cut as deeply as my father's confession. For years, I thought I had been the unwanted one, the child taken for granted. Now I was standing next to a sister who had been branded the mistake. I turned to look at her. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but her face carried a kind of strength that reminded me of my own reflection in a mirror after sleepless nights. "So, while I was breaking myself trying to prove I was worthy, you were locked away in silence, thinking you weren't even meant to exist." She nodded slowly, biting her lip. They made me feel like I was something to be ashamed of. I had birthdays without them, school recitals where I searched the crowd and found no one. Every time I asked why you weren't around, they changed the subject or said you were too busy. I thought maybe you hated me. Her voice cracked on that last word, and something inside me shifted. For years, I had carried rage against my parents for favoring an invisible child. I had built Anna into a rival in my imagination, someone who had stolen what little love I had. But now, standing before her, I saw not a rival, but another victim of the same lie. I exhaled slowly. "Anna, I don't hate you. I can't hate you. We were both trapped in different cages, but the walls were built by the same hands. Her tears spilled, but this time she let out a shaky laugh through them. Then maybe it's time we break the cage together. For the first time, I felt the faint spark of something I never believed I would have. Sisterhood. We found a small waiting area and sat side by side. The chairs were stiff, the air thick with disinfectant. But somehow, that corner of the hospital became our sanctuary. We shared fragments of our childhoods, laying them out like puzzle pieces. Mine filled with constant pressure to be perfect, hers painted with the emptiness of being hidden. Different wounds, same source. As Anna spoke about nights she cried herself to sleep wondering if she even mattered, I realized the cruelty wasn't just in the lies. It was in the way our parents had stolen from us the chance to grow up together, to share laughter, fights, secrets, and memories. "Do you think we can fix this?" she asked quietly, staring down at her hands. I thought for a long moment. The truth was, I didn't know. Trust was fragile, and betrayal had left scars too deep to vanish with apologies. But one thing I did know. Together, we stood a better chance of healing than alone. "We can't change what they did," I said finally, my voice firm. "But we can decide what happens next. We can choose to stop being silent. If they built this family on lies, then we'll rebuild it on truth, even if that truth hurts." Anna's eyes met mine, and for the first time, there was no shame in her gaze, only determination. She nodded. "Together then." The hallway grew quiet around us. For years, silence in my family had meant suppression, secrets, and erasure. But now, sitting beside my sister, silence meant something new, an unspoken pact. From this day forward, the truth would no longer belong only to our parents. It would belong to us. The following morning, I returned to the hospital with Anna by my side. We hadn't planned it in detail, but the silence we shared in the car was an agreement in itself. Today, we would face our mother. Helen Turner had always been the master of half-truths, wrapping her words in warmth while steering conversations away from danger. She had a way of making lies sound like protection and neglect sound like sacrifice. But after last night, I no longer wanted comfort. I wanted answers. When we stepped into the waiting area outside my father's room, she was already there. Her hair was pinned neatly as always, her posture upright, her face calm, yet her eyes darted nervously when she saw us arrive together. "Rachel," she said first, her voice soft. "Thank you for being here. Your father needs us more than ever." Then her gaze flickered toward Anna, a hesitation that betrayed decades of practiced denial. "And you, I didn't expect—" "Don't," I cut her off. My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. "Don't act surprised. You've had 34 years to prepare for this moment. You're the one who chose silence." Her hands tightened around the strap of her purse. "It wasn't silence. It was—" Complicated. Anna stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady enough to hold weight. "Complicated for who, Mom?" "For you. Because for me, it was abandonment. And for Rachel, it was deception. Complicated is just the word you use to cover cruelty." Helen's face stiffened, but she didn't look away. I could see the faint quiver of her jaw, the battle to keep her usual composure. "I thought I was protecting you both," she said finally, her words low. "Protecting us?" I repeated, my laugh bitter. "By making me believe I was alone? By forcing me to be perfect, to carry all the weight, while you kept Anna hidden as if she were some family shame? That isn't protection. That's control." Her lips parted as if to argue, but I pressed on. "Do you know what it does to a child to grow up thinking she's not allowed to be weak? That love is conditional. You taught me strength wasn't a gift. It was the only way to survive in this house. And you—" I pointed at Anna, my voice breaking. "You taught her she didn't even deserve to exist." Anna's tears flowed freely now, but she didn't look away from our mother. "I needed you to show up. Just once. For a birthday. for a recital, for anything. But you chose Rachel's silence over my presence. You turned both of us into ghosts in different ways. For a long moment, the room went quiet, except for the distant beep of monitors down the hall. My mother's mask began to slip. The calm posture wavered, her shoulders sinking under the weight of our words. She lowered herself into a chair, her hands trembling. "I was afraid," she whispered, almost too softly to hear. "Afraid of losing control. Afraid that if the truth came out, our family would fall apart. I thought, if Rachel believed she was the only one, she'd thrive. And if Anna stayed hidden, she'd be safe from judgment. I didn't realize I was destroying both of you." The confession didn't bring relief. It stung. But it was the first time she had admitted fear instead of cloaking it in authority. I sat across from her, my chest tight. "Do you really understand what you've done? You didn't just lie. You stole years we'll never get back. You took away the chance for us to grow together, to fight like sisters, to laugh, to share life. That's gone. And it's because of you." Her tears finally came, rolling silently down her cheeks. For the first time in my life, my mother looked fragile, not commanding, not untouchable, just human. Anna leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "We're not here to destroy you, Mom. We're here because we won't live in your lies anymore. If you want to stay in our lives, it has to be with truth. No more secrets. No more pretending Helen looked between us, her face pale, her breath uneven." And in that silence, I realized the balance of power had shifted. For decades, she had controlled the narrative. But now, the story belonged to us. I stood, my voice steady. "You raised me to believe strength meant silence. But today, strength means speaking the truth. And whether you join us in it or not, Anna and I will no longer carry your secrets." For the first time, my mother had no reply. She bowed her head, her tears staining the fabric of her dress. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But freedom. That night, after confronting our mother, sleep refused to come. I lay awake in my small Denver apartment, the city lights glowing faintly through the blinds. Every memory of my childhood now carried a shadow. The missing photos in the family album, the baby blanket stitched with the name Anna, the hushed conversations that stopped whenever I walked into a room. The pieces had always been there, but I hadn't dared to connect them. Now, with Anna in my life, it was impossible to ignore the puzzle anymore. At 7 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Anna. "We need to know everything." No more half answers, I agreed instantly. We met at a small coffee shop near the hospital. The air was thick with roasted beans and early morning chatter, but between us, silence hung heavy. Anna pushed a notebook across the table. Inside were scribbled dates, questions, fragments of things she remembered. "Mom always told me not to ask about the early years," Anna said, her voice tight. "She kept me away from relatives, away from neighbors who might talk." But there were slips. Times she mentioned places, people, things she couldn't completely hide. I flipped through the pages. One note caught my eye. Spring 1991. Mom stopped visiting Grandma for months. Dad absent on weekends. Something about Aurora Hospital. I froze. 1991 was the year Anna was born. "Do you remember anything from that time?" I asked. Anna shook her head. "Just stories. I was told I was sickly as a baby, that it was better I stayed out of sight. But the way they said it, it always sounded rehearsed." My stomach churned. That word, sickly, sounded less like truth and more like an excuse. "We need records," I said firmly. "Hospital files, birth certificates, anything." Anna's eyes widened. "Do you think they'd still exist?" "They have to. Secrets leave paper trails." Later that afternoon, we drove to Aurora General Hospital. The building had been renovated since the 90s, but something about walking through those automatic doors brought a chill down my spine. We approached the records department, where a receptionist asked for identification. When Anna handed over her driver's license, the woman typed her name into the computer. Within moments, a file appeared. She disappeared into the back and returned with a thin folder marked Turner, Anna, 1991. Anna's hands trembled as she opened it. I leaned close, scanning the yellowed pages. There it was, her birth record. Mother, Helen Turner. Father, Samuel Turner. Date, March 12, 1991. Notes, complications at birth. Extended hospitalization required. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Extended hospitalization, that's why they told me she was fragile. But what struck me most was a doctor's note. Parental visitation irregular. Mother present, father absent for significant periods. Why would Dad avoid the hospital? I muttered. Anna's face paled. Because admitting I existed was easier when I wasn't in front of him. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, anger surged in me again. My father had spent years demanding perfection from me while pretending Anna didn't even deserve his presence in her first days of life. But the file revealed more. A line written in faded pen. Recommendation. Family counseling due to high stress and secrecy concerns. My breath caught. Even the doctors had seen it. Even then, professionals recognized the damage secrecy could cause. But my parents ignored it, choosing silence over healing. Anna slammed the folder shut, her jaw tight. They lied to both of us, Rachel. Not just about who I was, but about why I was hidden. This wasn't protection. It was shame. Her words hit me like cold water. Shame. That single word explained so much. Why my mother avoided certain relatives. Why family albums were missing pages. Why whispers seemed to trail me through childhood. They were afraid of judgment, I said slowly, piecing it together. Afraid of looking imperfect to the world. They thought keeping you in the shadows would make them look like the ideal family. And they made me the golden mask to wear in front of everyone else. Anna's eyes filled with tears. And all it did was break us. We sat in silence for a long moment, the file between us like a wound split open. I wanted to scream, to march back into my father's room and throw the evidence at him, but instead, I closed the folder gently. This is just the beginning, I said. We've uncovered their lies, but we need to decide what to do with the truth. Do we expose them to everyone, or do we carry it quietly, like they wanted us to? Anna's gaze hardened. No more silence. If they built their lives on lies, then the least we can do is refuse to carry them any longer. I don't care if it hurts them. I want to live free. Her words struck a chord deep inside me. For the first time, I realized Anna wasn't weak. She wasn't fragile. She was ready to fight. And so was I. The folder sat heavy in my lap as Anna drove us toward my grandfather's house in Denver. The same red brick home that had hosted Christmas dinners, birthday gatherings, and long summer afternoons when I was young. Except this time, we weren't arriving with gifts or smiles. We were arriving with evidence. 34 years' worth of lies pressed into yellowing hospital records and missing memories. Anna's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. Are you sure about this? She asked. I stared out the window, watching the blur of passing trees. If we stay quiet, then we're no better than them. They taught us silence, Anna. We're not going to repeat it. When we pulled into the driveway, several cars were already parked outside. Word had spread quickly since the confrontation at the hospital. My grandfather, Frank Turner, had called for a family dinner. But we both knew this wouldn't be dinner. This would be Judgment Day. Inside, the air was thick with tension. My uncles and aunts sat around the long dining table, their faces drawn and wary. Cousins whispered in corners, sneaking glances at Anna as though she were an apparition. My parents were already there, seated stiffly, my father pale from his recent hospitalization, my mother's hands folded neatly in her lap as if poise could erase guilt. Grandfather Frank stood at the head of the table, his sharp eyes scanning the room. A retired lawyer, he had spent a lifetime dismantling lies. Now, his gaze landed on me, Rachel, Anna, you've brought us here. Speak. My heart pounded, but I opened the folder, spreading the documents across the polished oak table. Bank statements, hospital records, birth certificates. Each page a piece of the truth they had buried for decades. "This is Anna Turner," I said, my voice steady though my hands trembled. "My sister. Hidden from me since the day she was born. Our parents chose silence over truth, shame over honesty. And while they raised me to believe I was alone, they raised her to believe she was unwanted. These papers prove it. They didn't just lie, they stole our childhood from us." Gasps rippled through the room. My Aunt Linda leaned forward, her lips parted in shock. "Helen, Samuel, is this true?" My mother's face flushed crimson. "It was complicated," she began, her voice wavering. "You don't understand what it was like back then." "No," I cut her off sharply. "Stop hiding behind that word. Complicated is just the veil you use to disguise cruelty." My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him, a man stripped of his authority. Anna stepped closer to the table, her voice shaking but strong. "I spent birthdays alone. I searched the crowd at every recital, every play, hoping to see them. They never came. And Rachel, she carried all the pressure, all the expectations, never knowing she had a sister who could have shared the burden. You call that protection? I call it abandonment." The room fell silent. My cousins stared at us with wide eyes. My uncles exchanged uneasy glances. The weight of the truth pressed down on everyone. Grandfather Frank's voice cut through the stillness, stern and unyielding. "David, Helen, you turned your daughters into victims of your pride. Rachel into a soldier who was never allowed to rest, and Anna into a shadow who was never allowed to exist. And now, you sit here, silent? What say you?" My father shifted, his face lined with fatigue and guilt. "I thought Rachel was strong enough. I thought Anna was too fragile. I believed it was the only way." His words echoed like poison, the same excuse, repackaged, repeated, strong enough, fragile, the labels that had defined us both. I slammed my hand against the table, the sound sharp as thunder. "You didn't give me strength. You gave me loneliness. You didn't shield Anna. You erased her. Stop pretending this was for us. It was for you, for your image, for your pride." My mother finally broke, her tears spilling over. "We were terrified. We thought if the world knew they would judge us. Judge me. I wanted to protect our family name." Grandfather's voice rose, sharp as a gavel. "And in doing so, you destroyed the family itself." The words rang out, final and damning. My parents lowered their heads, no longer able to hide behind excuses. For the first time, Anna reached for my hand under the table. Her grip was firm, no longer timid. Together, we faced the room of relatives, no longer as strangers, but as sisters. "I won't carry their silence anymore," I said, my voice clear, "and I won't let their choices define me. This family can choose whether to face the truth or bury it again, but Anna and we will live free of it." The room remained tense, but something shifted. My Aunt Linda placed a hand on her chest, her eyes wet with sympathy. One by one, cousins began to nod, quiet murmurs of support rippling across the table. For once, the silence that filled the Turner household wasn't built on secrets. It was built on recognition. That night, as Anna and I walked out of the house together, the cold Denver air filled my lungs like fire. For years, I had been suffocated by secrets, crushed by the lie of being an only child. But now, the truth stood beside me, flesh and blood, hand in hand. And no matter how messy, how painful, or how raw, it was ours. The night after the family reckoning, I barely slept. I lay awake in my small Denver apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every silence, every broken expression on my parents' faces. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. Messages from cousins, from Aunt Linda, even from family friends who had already heard whispers of the dinner's fallout. Some messages offered sympathy. You were brave to speak up. Others carried bitterness. Did you have to humiliate them like that? The truth had finally been set loose, and like a wildfire, it spread faster than anyone could contain. By morning, the phone calls started. My mother first. I let it ring, then my father. His number flashed, then vanished. When they realized I wouldn't answer, they turned to voicemails. Pleas, excuses, even veiled threats about airing family matters in front of others. I deleted them all without listening to the end. For the first time in my life, I felt no obligation to pick up. Anna called mid-morning. Her voice was hoarse, but steadier than I'd ever heard it. Rachel, they came to my apartment last night. They wanted to convince me to stay quiet, to say the documents were exaggerated. I told them no. I told them I'm done lying. I swallowed hard, a strange mixture of pride and fear swelling in me. Are you safe? Yes, she said, then paused. But for once, I don't feel afraid of them. I feel free. Her words echoed the feeling I hadn't yet dared to name. Freedom. In the days that followed, the Turner family split into factions. Aunt Linda stood firmly on our side, defending us against whispers of betrayal. She told anyone who would listen that the real betrayal had been hiding Anna's existence and bleeding me dry under the guise of responsibility. Other relatives wavered, caught between old loyalties and the shock of the truth. My Uncle Stephen muttered at gatherings that Rachel made a scene for attention, but even he couldn't explain away the stack of bank statements and records. Evidence has a way of silencing excuses. My parents, once the polished hosts of every holiday dinner, became reclusive. The Aurora house grew quiet, its windows dark at night. Word reached me through neighbors that foreclosure notices had arrived. Without my transfers, the financial cracks were too deep to hide. A part of me felt vindicated, but mostly, I felt exhausted. Watching them stumble wasn't the victory I had imagined as a girl ignored in her own home. It was simply the natural consequence of years built on lies. One evening, Anna and I met at a cafe near Union Station. For the first time, we weren't sitting as strangers, but as sisters trying to stitch together something fragile and new. She stirred her coffee nervously. I keep thinking about all the years we lost. All the birthdays, the school dances, the holidays. I used to imagine I had a sister somewhere, but then I'd tell myself I was being foolish. I smiled sadly. I used to wish for someone who understood me. Someone who knew what it was like to grow up under their shadow. Turns out, you were real all along. Silence hung between us for a moment, not uncomfortable but heavy with the weight of lost time. Then Anna looked at me with a small, determined smile. We can't change the past, but maybe we can decide what the future looks like. Her words settled into me like a seed planting itself in fertile ground. For so long, my story had been defined by what my parents had hidden. Now maybe it could be defined by what Anna and I chose to build. Meanwhile, the backlash rippled further than I expected. Former family friends reached out, some to apologize for never questioning the favoritism, others to distance themselves altogether. One even sent me a message that read, "Your parents sacrificed for appearances." I see it now. I'm sorry. But perhaps the most surprising moment came a week later, when my grandfather, Frank, called me directly. Rachel, his voice was gravelly but warm. I've spent a lifetime unearthing lies in courtrooms. I never thought I'd have to do it at my own family table. What you and Anna did, it was necessary. Don't doubt that I felt my throat tighten. Grandpa, I don't know if I was brave or just desperate. Sometimes, he replied, they're the same thing. Not all consequences were clean. Anna lost a few friends who accused her of making drama for attention. I faced whispers at work when rumors about my parents calling me unstable trickled into professional circles. But instead of breaking under it, I stood straighter. I had lived through worse. The silence of being unseen was far more crushing than gossip. And for once, I wasn't standing alone. One Sunday afternoon, Anna and I took a walk through City Park. Children laughed in the distance, families picnicked on the grass, and for the first time, we allowed ourselves to laugh too. She told me stories about her childhood, the quiet birthdays, the unanswered questions, and I shared mine. The invisible expectations, the weight of being strong enough. Some stories made us cry, some made us laugh, but all of them made us whole. Two halves of the same wound, finally stitched together. As the sun dipped low, Anna turned to me. Rachel, what do we do now? I thought about it for a long moment, then answered softly. We live. Not for them, not for their secrets. For us, she nodded, her eyes shining with something new. Hope. For years, my life had been defined by what my parents took from me. My money, my recognition, my truth. But now, standing beside my sister, I realized they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't taken my voice. They hadn't taken my future. The family might never be the same again, but Anna and I, we were finally free to write our own story. And this time, it would be written in truth. The weeks after the confrontation were a strange mix of silence and noise. Silence from my parents, who stopped calling after it became clear I wouldn't bend. Noise from the world around me, relatives whispering, neighbors gossiping, even old acquaintances reaching out to ask if the stories were true. At first, the attention made me feel exposed, raw, as if my private wounds had been spread across the neighborhood like laundry hung out for strangers to gawk at. But slowly, I realized something unexpected. For the first time, people weren't dismissing me. They were seeing me. Anna became a quiet constant in my life. We met for coffee every Wednesday at a small cafe tucked between bookstores in downtown Denver. She would arrive with a worn notebook in hand, filled with ideas for how to move forward. One day, she confessed, I've been looking into nursing programs. I don't know if I'll be any good, but I want to try. I want to build something real. I studied her face. Nervous but determined, fragile but trying. Anna, for the first time, you don't have to prove anything to anyone but yourself. That's enough. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't spill over. Instead, she smiled faintly, almost with relief. Meanwhile, my parents struggled in ways they had never experienced before. Aunt Linda told me they'd been forced to move into a modest rental after the Aurora house slipped away to the bank. My mother, once so polished and proud, was seen wandering the aisles of a discount grocery store, her shoulders hunched. My father, who had always spoken with authority, avoided family gatherings altogether. I didn't rejoice in their downfall. The truth is, it hurt to picture them like that. They had hurt me deeply, yes, but I never wanted them to crumble. What I had always wanted was honesty, fairness, acknowledgement. But sometimes life offers consequence instead of closure. I knew I needed help to process everything, so I returned to therapy. My sessions with Maria, my therapist, became a sanctuary. I told her about the years of being the strong one, about the weight of responsibility that had never been mine to carry. I told her about the ache of discovering Anna, not as a gift, but as a secret hidden from me. Maria listened patiently, then said something that stayed with me. Rachel, strength doesn't mean carrying everything. It means choosing what to carry. You've been strong all along. But now, you get to decide what's worth holding. Those words shifted something inside me. For the first time, I realized I had a choice. I could carry guilt, bitterness, resentment. Or I could carry boundaries, peace, and hope. My work at EcoVision Design grew steadier too. The firm landed a contract to design a sustainable community center in Boulder. Instead of throwing myself into 80-hour weeks, I learned to delegate. I hired a project manager to share the load, and I started leaving the office on time at least twice a week. Ethan noticed the change. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, he leaned against the counter and smiled. You're different, Rachel. Softer somehow. Lighter. I looked up from chopping vegetables and laughed softly. Maybe it's because for the first time, I'm living for myself, not just surviving for everyone else. He pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and whispered, That's the woman I fell in love with. Not because she carries the world, but because she finally let herself rest. Anna's progress surprised me most of all. She enrolled in a community college program while working part-time at a small pharmacy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. When she sent me a photo of her first paycheck, she captioned it, "It's not much, but it's mine." I stared at that message for a long time, my chest tightening with emotions I couldn't name. Maybe pride, maybe sorrow for all the years she had lived under illusions, maybe hope. At our next coffee meeting, I told her, "Anna, it's never been about money. It's about standing on your own feet, and you're finally doing that." She smiled shyly, but I could see it, the flicker of resilience, the same resilience I had carried alone for so many years. Now, it was hers too. One Sunday, I drove out toward the foothills of the Rockies. The house I had bought, a modest gray home with a sloping roof and a garden in back, was becoming more than a shelter. It was becoming mine in a way the Aurora house never had been. I planted lavender along the fence, tomatoes in the backyard, and on the porch, I set up a rocking chair where I could sit and watch the sun set behind the mountains. That evening, Anna joined me. We sat side by side, sipping tea as the sky turned shades of pink and orange. She looked around and whispered, "This feels like home, not theirs." Ours. I felt tears sting my eyes. For years, home had been a word soaked with pain, favoritism, exclusion. Now, sitting there with my sister, I realized it could mean something else, something healing. Of course, the scars remained. My relationship with my parents stayed fragile, built on occasional polite meetings where we spoke about health or weather but never about money, never about betrayal. The distance was permanent, but so was the boundary I had drawn. I no longer needed their approval, nor their excuses. I had reclaimed my voice, my choices, my worth. And for the first time, I wasn't carrying that journey alone. As the night deepened, Anna leaned her head against my shoulder. "Rachel," she whispered, "thank you for not giving up on me, even when you had every reason to." I wrapped my arm around her and replied softly, "You're my sister. And sisters, real sisters, don't give up on each other." For so long, my life had been about survival, about being the invisible backbone of a family that never saw me. But now, in the quiet of my mountain home, with Anna beside me and Ethan by my side, I understood something new. Rebuilding doesn't mean erasing what was broken. It means choosing what to keep, what to let go, and what to grow in its place. And I had chosen freedom. The first snow of winter fell softly across Denver, blanketing the city in a quiet calm that felt both comforting and lonely. I sat by the window of my small mountain house, a mug of hot tea in hand, watching the flakes drift lazily past the glass. It had been nearly a year since the confrontation that changed everything, since the day I walked into that hospital and learned I had a sister my parents had hidden from me. So much had unraveled since then, but as I looked out at the snow, I realized something more important. Pieces of me had been rewoven too. Anna had come a long way. She now balanced her classes in nursing with part-time work at a local clinic. It wasn't easy, but she no longer leaned on illusions or parental favoritism. She leaned on her own 2 feet, shaky at times, but grounded in reality. Every now and then she would send me short texts. "Just passed my exam." Or, "First paycheck went straight to rent. Feels good." Each one filled me with pride and also a bittersweet ache for the years we had lost to secrecy. One Saturday afternoon, Anna came to visit. We sat in the kitchen while I stirred a pot of soup, the smell of garlic and herbs filling the room. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Regret what?" I replied, glancing at her. "Finding out. Knowing me. Knowing everything." The spoon paused in my hand. I looked at her. My sister, once hidden, now sitting at my table with tired but hopeful eyes. "Anna," I said gently, "the truth hurt, but I will never regret having you in my life. Lies can't erase what's real, and you're real. That matters more than anything." Her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw peace there. My parents, however, remained a different story. We spoke only occasionally, short and careful conversations. They asked about my health, about work, sometimes about Anna. But they never apologized again, never tried to explain why they had hidden her, or why they had drained me for years to fund her life. That silence was its own truth. Some wounds were too deep for them to face. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. It was my mother's handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing myself. "Rachel," it read, "we may never undo the mistakes we made, but we hope that one day you'll understand we did what we thought was necessary. We love you, in our own flawed way." I sat with that letter for a long time, the words burning and soothing at the same time. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was all they were capable of. And for the first time, I accepted that. Some people can only love in incomplete ways. It was up to me to decide how much of that love I would allow into my life. Ethan stood by me through it all. His presence was steady, unshaken. On evenings when old doubts crept in, was I too harsh, too unforgiving? He would remind me, "Rachel, boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. You finally made space for yourself to breathe." Together, we began planning a future. We spoke about marriage, about children, about the kind of home we wanted to build. A home built on openness, not secrets. One night, as we walked along the frozen lake near my house, he squeezed my hand and said, "Your story doesn't end with them. It continues with you." Those words echoed in my mind for days afterward. The real turning point came when Anna and I attended a holiday gathering at Aunt Linda's. The house was warm, filled with cousins, laughter, and the smell of roasted turkey. For years, I had dreaded family events, always bracing myself for comparisons, whispers, or pity. But this time was different. When Anna and I walked in together, side by side, the room quieted. Then, one by one, relatives greeted us, not as fragments of a family scandal, but as sisters. Real sisters. Someone even said, "It's good to finally see you both together. This feels right." For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, the walking wallet, the one who had to be strong because no one else would. I was simply Rachel, whole, visible, and enough. Later that evening, as Anna and I stood outside beneath the winter stars, she whispered, "Do you think we'll ever really forgive them?" I thought about it. About the years lost, the betrayal, the favoritism, the secrecy. About the weight I had carried for too long. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I finally said. "It means we stop letting their choices define who we are. We forgive for ourselves, not for them." She nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then I'm ready to try." So was I. That night when I returned home, I lit a small candle on my porch. The flame flickered against the cold air, fragile but steady. It reminded me of myself, scarred but unbroken, wounded but alive. I whispered softly into the night, "I am no longer the hidden daughter. I am no longer the walking wallet. I am Rachel Turner, and I have found my truth." As I close this chapter of my life, I want to turn to you, the one listening, the one who made it this far. Maybe you've carried secrets too heavy for one person. Maybe you've been overlooked, silenced, or used. Maybe you've felt like love was given to everyone else but you. If my story has reached you, let it remind you of this. You are not invisible. You are not defined by the lies or favoritism of others. You are worthy of love, of peace, of freedom. So please, if you're watching this, hit the like button, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from, and subscribe to this channel. Your support means more than you know, and sharing your own experiences helps remind people like me that we're not alone. Because in the end, the truth doesn't just set us free, it connects us.